All right, perfect. So we are at the on our agenda. We're at the report of the chair. Okay. So I just want to first of all, good evening. I want to begin my remarks tonight by thanking the board for their diligence and engagement during our last meeting as we discussed and decided on the school reopening plan. No one anticipated sitting through what practically ended up being a 24-hour Zoom marathon to decide, one of the most complex and important issues that we've worked on at any point in our careers. So I certainly hope that you all had a chance to get some rest after what was a very difficult week. And while we anticipated that any decision that we made that night would be an unpopular one, at least there should be no doubt that we were prepared and well informed. And as the implementation of the school reopening plan progresses, the board is going to be more than ready to weigh in if and when the process requires it from us. So again, thank you all for your hard work and your dedication. The board also now welcomes back teachers and staff who've returned to work and have begun preparing for the school year. So we, along with our students and parents and the larger community, are all coming to grips with the reality of what is the new school year and the challenging impact that public health safety during the pandemic has had on education. We recognize the fear, the anxiety and frustration that many are experiencing, and we share those feelings with you. We hope that you trust the support systems that we've asked be in place for you, and we know that you will always act with what is in the best interest of our students at heart. Next, on behalf of the board, I want to thank the staff at the Gerald E. Talbot Community School for planning and organizing the renaming ceremony that took place yesterday morning. We were joined by Commissioner Macon, Mayor Snyder, the superintendent, and of course, the guest of honor, Mr. Talbot himself. It was a very special moment with much needed positive vibes. I want to say that it was also a joy to see the Talbot family together celebrating the occasion. I was asked to relate to the board a sincere gratitude for this decision to recognize Mr. Talbot. And as a side note, I also want to share that the students at the school have decided to adopt green and teal as the new school colors, green for Gerald, T for Talbot. So I hope you appreciate hearing that. It made me smile when I heard it yesterday from Principal Hannah. Lastly, I want to remind the board and families that everyone is invited to join either of two Parent University online technology information sessions. The first one started earlier tonight, Tuesday, September 1st, and the second one will be tomorrow, Wednesday, September 2nd. It's running from 5:30 to 7:30. These sessions will help attendees become familiar with the two tech platforms students are using, Seesaw for grades pre-K through 3rd, and Google Classroom for grades 4th through 12th. And there will be demonstrations and opportunities to get answers to your questions, and also interpreters will be available for this event. And with that, I'll hand it off to the superintendent for his report. Javier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland. We're honored to have their children among our students today. I would like to start by recognizing Cindy Soul, who is our finalist for Maine Teacher of the Year. I would like to congratulate Cindy for becoming one of 4 finalists in the state of Maine for Teacher of the Year. Cindy teaches 4th grade at Talbot Community School, Go Talbot, and already made headlines in May when she was selected as the 2020 Cumberland County Teacher of the Year. Now she's in the running to be the Maine Teacher of the Year when that selection is made in October. Cindy has taught at Talbot for 20 years. Principal Ann Hanna describes her as, quote, exceptional, end quote. The dynamic learning environment that Cindy fosters inspires curiosity and citizenship in her students. She's a lifelong Maine resident, and she's incredibly passionate about teaching about science and the natural world, and encourages students to construct scientific understanding through observation, questioning, and collaborative thinking. She also empowers students to see themselves as meaningful contributors to their community. Cindy serves on Talbot's leadership team. She mentors new teachers in literacy instruction and leads professional development work during the school year and over the summer. She is a 2020 Funds for Teacher Fellow and looks forward to continued professional discovery and learning through that program and in other ways. She's been a critical part of the incredible transformation that is happening at Talbot with Principal Hannah and with her talented team. We're very, very proud of Cindy for advancing to the next phase of this highly competitive selection process. We're always striving to attract and retain the best and brightest educators as part of our Portland Promise people's goal, and Cindy is without a doubt an exemplar of teaching excellence in Portland's public schools. So a heartfelt congratulations, Cindy. You're amazing, and we are incredibly proud of you and looking forward to taking the state by storm. It's been a while since we've had a Teacher of the Year.
Thank you, Superintendent Patana, Chairperson Rodriguez, and members of the board for recognizing me this evening. It has really been a true privilege to be selected to represent the dedicated, innovative, and creative teachers from my home school of Talbot, from Portland Public, and from Cumberland County Schools. As you mentioned, I have been a part of this district for 20 years, so it has been incredibly awesome to be the one to be able to advocate for and shine a positive light on the adaptability and flexibility of teachers during a time when current events are incredibly complex and challenging. As we have returned to school, I have witnessed firsthand the collaboration that is occurring across schools, working to ensure safety and wellness, to continue to be active participants in disrupting racism, and to provide engaging learning experiences for all students. A testament that we will navigate our way through all the uncertainties of this coming school year together. And thank you all for your leadership in this process.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Under normal circumstances, we would give you a standing ovation. So I'm standing, and here's my ovation.
I was just going to say, this is where we stand up and we take pictures with.
I know this is strange.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a lovely, lovely ceremony yesterday to renaming the school. And I just think it's going to be a great year.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for those words, and congratulations. We're so proud to have you in PPS, and clearly you make us better. So thank you so much.
Tonight, I'd also like to highlight two new key administrators to our leadership team: Jesse Applegate, our new Director of Student Support Services, and Chris McCarthy, Director of our Breathe Clinical and Behavioral Supports Program. Jesse Applegate most recently was the Director of Special Education Academic Policy and Strategic Planning at the New York City Department of Education. He's also been a special education teacher in the New York public schools and also worked with public correctional systems across the country to develop educational programs for incarcerated students. He holds master's degrees in education, policy, and management from the Harvard Graduate School of Education and in special education from Brooklyn College. He earned his bachelor's degree in religion from Haverford College. So we're incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to introduce Jesse Applegate to the board. And Malia, I know that you're super happy with this hire. So do you want to say anything, or just pass it on to Jesse to say some words?
I'll give my time to you, Jesse, so you can say hello and meet people. But I'm thrilled to have Jesse join us. I think he brings the right skills and the right mindset to the work, and both are critical for this type of work. So we're really excited to have him join us.
Thank you, Malia. Hey, everybody. It's good to be with you all virtually. I just, first of all, want to thank you for the support and the welcome this evening and ongoing. So I'm really thrilled to be joining the incredible work that's happening in the Portland Public Schools right now, particularly around the Portland Promise. The role of the Student Support Services Department is to ensure that we realize the vision and mission and goals of the Promise for students who have some of the greatest need in the district, which means guiding them to academic success and social emotional well-being in school, and critically, I would add, doing so alongside their non-disabled peers. So I want you to know that I take this role and responsibility very seriously. And as I said, there's great work already being done. So I'm really looking forward to continuing and building on that alongside my colleagues. And I'm very excited to get started. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you.
And then you approved Chris McCarthy at the previous board meeting, and he is joining us today. Chris McCarthy, who is our Director of Breathe Clinical and Behavioral Support Programs, is joining us from Brunswick School Department, where he was the principal and director of the Real School. Day treatment program, a day treatment school that's been in place for a long time, and Jesse had been director since 2018. He brings a diverse background of program management and therapeutic administration, including 15 years with Eckerd Youth Alternatives, 3 years with the Maine Quality Forum, and 7 years in integrated health services with Bath Iron Works. He's also a past member of the Brunswick School Board, so he knows the work of the school board as well. Mr. McCarthy holds a master's degree in community psychology from Michigan State University, and his bachelor's degree is in special education and psychology from Lyndon State University. So I know that the board knows intimately the challenging work that Chris is taking on, but Chris, we're incredibly happy to have you here and grateful that you are joining us.
Thank you very much, Javier. I want to thank the board and Javier, Malia, Aaron, for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be part of what I believe to be a truly forward-thinking district and a forward-thinking leadership team. I'm hoping I can meet expectations. I'm really focused on fulfilling the Portland Promise, and I think Jesse just encapsulated the mission, in my mind, the mission and vision perfectly in terms of the work we are trying to put in place for these students. And so I won't repeat it. I'll just say I agree with it, and I'm really looking forward to working with Jesse and with everybody. Thank you for the opportunity.
So just welcome to both of you. Very much look forward to having you join our team and continuing the work. So thank you for being here.
Thanks very much.
I'd also like to recognize tonight Susan Kim, senior at the University of Pennsylvania, for all of her hard work during a virtual internship with us this summer. Susan worked tirelessly with Grace Valenzuela and others on our communications team to build our new web page about school reopening and a lot more. Susan was here as part of an internship facilitated by Academic Experiences Abroad, AEA, which provided a scholarship to her that funded her work with us. AEA provides international education immersion on a local level to bring people around the world closer to understanding and appreciating one another. Suzanne's college classes started today, so she was unable to join us for this celebration, but what she brought was incredible strength in design and in thinking about how to integrate lots of ideas into visuals, and I think you've seen some of the effects of that work in some of the products that we were able to put out. She proved to be a tremendously hardworking, detail-oriented, communicative, and independent intern with amazing editing skills and a keen eye for aesthetics. So thank you, Susan, wherever you are out in the virtual world associated with the University of Pennsylvania, for everything that you've done. And also we invited the AEA program folks, but I don't believe that they were able to join us, but we also would like to extend our appreciation to them. Grace is a tough boss. I can tell you that because she bosses me around all the time. And so Susan was amazing and just helped tremendously. So Grace, I don't know if you want to add anything, but we just wanted to recognize Susan.
She's an awesome intern, very, very independent, and can do the work without much help from us. So it was really a lovely relationship that we had, and she never forgets to check in and tells you what she has done for the day. So every day I have an email from her. This is how far I've gone today, and if I have a question, and these are my questions for tomorrow. So lovely relationship with her. And I also want to thank AEA because Susan was paid, but we did not pay. I don't know if you said that, Javier. I was late coming in from Parent U. But AEA paid for her internship, and it was a paid internship, but we did not pay her directly. So thank you to them very much.
Great. So you heard earlier about the Talbot renaming ceremony yesterday, which was outstanding. I don't have much to add other than to say that obviously the pandemic has made everything just a little bit different, but it was incredible to be able to go ahead and do this and to be joined by Mr. Talbot and members of his family at this event. I very much look forward to having more opportunities to have Mr. Talbot share his wisdom, his humor, his just goodness overall with our students over the years. And yesterday was an outstanding start to that. I'm pleased to announce that yesterday the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced that it was extending several of the waivers that have been in place since last spring that have facilitated school districts' ability to provide meals to families. The waivers were extended through the end of the calendar year, so through the end of December, and they will allow us to provide meals to all of our students, distribute them for pickup or delivery, and allow meals to be eaten off-premise, among other things. This is, without a doubt, great news for food security in Portland. And I would like to thank the many people nationally who have been working and advocating for those waivers to be extended, people in the state as well. But I want to give special recognition to Representative Pingree and Senator King, because both of them have been tireless advocates for this extension. I've been in contact with both of their offices, asking them to continue to push forward on this, and they have been awesome. And yesterday, I got my notice that it had happened from MSMA, and like 2 minutes later, I had something from Shelley Pingree's office. So they were on it. They worked hard for us, and so I would like to recognize them for that. So we are continuing to prepare for the return to learning in person starting on September 14th. Last week, we completed enrollment for our remote academy, and I have too many people to thank for the tremendous amount of work that went into pulling that off. We have almost 1,000 students that signed up for this option, and we'll be talking a little bit more about what the implications are on our staffing in just a little while. Last week, we hosted parent back-to-school orientation sessions that were open to all families, but focused on our multilingual families, so they were fully interpreted. Friday's session had nearly 100 participants, and just before our meeting today, as I think you heard from Chair Rodriguez, we hosted a technology platform session for parents, and there's another one scheduled for tomorrow. Our school-based orientation sessions started last week and continue this week and into the following week. Our student orientation, so where we actually have students on site, are set for next week on Wednesday, September 9th for students who are part of Cohort A, and Thursday, September 10th for students who are part of Cohort B. And as you know, this will be our sort of practice run for the first day of school. And before I end my report today, I wanted to provide some detailed information on where we are with staffing. So as you recall, when we sought your authorization to reopen school in person a couple of weeks ago, I was asked what would prompt me to change my recommendation from a hybrid reopening to a remote-only opening. And I said at the time that changes in the state's color coding health system obviously would be one, and that our inability to have staff in place to open school in a safe manner would be reasons to reevaluate our recommendation. Today, I would like to update you on where we are with staffing, and to that end, our Executive Director for Human Resources, Barb Stoddard, is going to provide some details on our leaves, staffing for the remote academy, and the effect on our overall staffing and other related matters. And right after Barb, I've also asked Executive Director for Budget and Finance, Miranda Fasullo, to make visible to you some of our concerns about the associated costs, particularly as we enter the next calendar year and we are no longer funded through the COVID relief fund and the infusion of resources that we got from the state. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Barb, and I believe that the PowerPoint that we are going to walk through has also been PDF'd and attached to Board Docs, so you can follow along there. So Barb?
Great. All right, Aaron, why don't we scroll forward here. One more, please. So we are back to talk about where we're at with staffing. Actually, you can go forward to one more, Aaron. I want to just kind of brief you on where we are with everything as we rapidly approach the start of the school year. First, I just want to very quickly recap where we are with staff requests for flexible work arrangements. This is the third time you've seen some of this data, so it's not new. You know that we had 274 requests total, and that was at the point that we closed the opportunity for people to submit on August 21st. So this is about 21% of our regular staff. 44% of those were ADA-related requests. 56% were not ADA-related. On the slide, you can also see that 186 of these requests were from teachers in the district, and 158 of those were from classroom teachers. So as we've done this work, and as I've talked about over the last couple meetings, we've prioritized connecting with everybody, particularly those staff whose requests fall under the ADA, because we have a legal obligation to do so. We have also, over this course of the last month, prioritized our employee contacts to focus on teachers, especially classroom teachers, so that we could understand what their needs were and try to get plans in place so that we could staff properly to reopen school. So where we are today on all of this work, we've had a team working diligently on this, and they've really done incredible work. So I'm very thankful that they were supporting me and my team as we worked on these. So as of today, 79% or 217 of the requests have basically been resolved. We're going through a final closeout process with those to, just it's really more paperwork, but they're done. And we still have about 57 of them, that's 21%, that are still, we're working through the final resolutions. So of those 57 requests, only 15 of them are ADA related. So that's good news for us. And our feeling is that all of these are manageable. And our expectation is that we're going to bring all of them to closure by the end of next week. Just a couple of side notes. as part of this process over the last month, we have processed 4 requests for leaves of absence for the year. They were all granted. We have also, since the request process closed on the 21st, we've had 11 late requests for flexible work arrangements, and 3 of those 11 were ADA-based requests. So none of those requests were an ask to work fully remotely, so that was helpful. And again, we feel like we are going to be able to resolve all of these in the next week as well. So I think we're in pretty good shape with that. So as you've already heard, and as most of you are aware, that since our last meeting, we've had a lot going on with staffing. I'm mostly talking about the district finalizing the registrations for students for the remote academy as our district's largest school with about 900 students. So once we received this information and the student cohorts were formed, we needed to assign staff to the academy. And this is where we saw the intersection of all of the work that we've been doing in HR with the flexible work arrangements and the requests for remote only work and the need to assign staff to the student cohorts. So much of last week was spent processing all of this information and ultimately creating and assigning approximately 70 staff members to the remote academy. So as of today, we're very close to complete with the process of fully staffing the academy. So as you might imagine, and as you can see on the slide, the shifting of staff has created, some disruption across the buildings as we're trying to manage all of this. And what we've done on this slide is to try to give you an idea of the positions that we've identified as needing to be filled in the coming week and a half. We've tallied all of the positions created by a vacancy, the need to backfill some positions from the remote academy staffing, and additional hires that we've identified as needed to open in hybrid. The sum total of these hires on this chart is about 90 people, so that feels pretty daunting. The qualified candidates figure on the chart represents 50% of applicants in our hiring pool, so that's an estimate. I will just make a side note that of the 43 teachers on this chart, we've already identified 12 interested and available candidates. So we've started to chip away quickly at some of these already. So this gives a glimpse as to the hiring lift that's needed in the coming very short period of time. So let's just jump to the next slide. We can come back to this with questions later. So, what are the implications? Clearly, with the remote academy, we've gone through a process of consolidating classrooms because there are less students on site, and staff have been pulled out to staff the academy. And so we're having some shifting of staff within buildings and across buildings. And you can see on the slide that we need to backfill some of these positions that we have moved over to the academy. So there's 21 teachers and 6 ed techs that need to be backfilled. I've already mentioned the leaves of absence in terms of what we need to do, and I don't envision many more. I have heard of 1 additional teacher and 1 ed tech that may be requesting, but I really don't anticipate that we're going to receive a large number of additional requests at this point. In terms of current vacancies not related to the remote academy, we have 6 teacher vacancies and 11 ed tech vacancies out there now. And then we have these additional positions that we've proposed to support the hybrid opening. And that's 11 FTE for some specialist teachers, 6.5 FTE for EL teachers, and these 30 dedicated building subs that we've talked about previously. Again, as I shared in the last meeting, in terms of our strategies, we're working with PEA to consider relaxing the contractual hiring requirements as we move to backfill these positions. This would allow our hiring managers to hire 1-year only positions for these backfills very quickly and efficiently. Many building principals have had robust pools of candidates this hiring season, and they could access those pools to identify strong candidates that they didn't initially hire. The process of admin tagging some known candidates has already started for those who know they have positions to fill, to see if they have candidates who are ready and available. I also want to mention that we've started an accelerated process for hiring for really all of these positions. So we have a team who has screened all of the applications in our teacher pools that we have had posted for about a month. Elementary and middle school, there's about 40 people in there. And that team is going through and looking, and they're poised to send qualified candidates to hiring managers. We also have a second team that has contacted all 39 candidates in our dedicated subpool. They did that today, and within the same day, they immediately received confirmation that we have 12 people who are on board and ready to go on site now. So we're feeling pretty good about that. That's pretty much, unless Malia or Aaron would like to add anything about Remote Academy, that's my staffing update. We can take questions for sure.
Nothing to add, Barb, just happy to answer questions when the time is appropriate. Thank you.
Maybe because this is part of my report, if we could just run through and do the budget as well, and then if the board has any questions, we can address them. So, Miranda, can you walk us through the budget portion, please?
You wanted me to do the presentation up here? I'm just kidding. Sure. Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to start off with basically kind of the big picture of where we are financially looking forward into the year. So I don't think this will come as too much of a surprise, given the presentation during the workshop a couple weeks ago. But basically at this point, I think we can say that we feel pretty comfortable that the resources that we're receiving from the state that get us through, the end of this calendar year are going to be sufficient to meet our most critical needs. That's not to say, we do still have some prioritization exercises and some, final adjustments to make, but I think we're looking pretty good, especially with the fact, to the extent you are all aware, I'm not sure, but the state just released last week a new allocation of about $25 million specifically for childcare. So I had budgeted about $1.2 million for childcare efforts in our regular CRF allocation, which was $6.2 million. So we're able now to kind of remove that from that source of funds and apply specifically for the childcare funding to meet those needs. So with that new development, I think we feel pretty comfortable that we're going to be able to fund, as we're planning right now, we're going to be able to fund our most critical needs through December 30th. So that includes substantial upfront investments in facilities and IT. And in addition to that, the first few months of our staffing and childcare related costs. The real concern is the fact that, we really do not have sufficient funding sources identified to be able to continue those efforts past December 30th. The costs are very significant and the funding sources are limited. So I'm going to go through in a little bit of detail in the next couple of slides how those costs break out. You can go ahead and move forward, Aaron. So as I said, I really want to focus on the costs after December 31st because that first column, CRF budget, we're feeling pretty comfortable that we're going to be able to fit in. So if you take a look at that second column, the continuation column, those are the costs that we're looking at to continue these efforts after December 31st. And just to be clear, we had some late breaking adjustments to some of these numbers. We were editing it, right up until 6:43 or something like that. So some of these numbers are ever so slightly different from what Barb said, but these should be the latest. We're looking at 20 Remote Academy teacher backfills. That will cost us approximately $900,000 to continue for the latter half of the year. And actually, I'd like to point out it's more than half the year. I mean, September to December is less than half the year, unfortunately. So, so for backfilling Remote Academy, about $900,000. For specials, adjustments to FTEs for the hybrid model, we're looking at another 11 FTEs, $491,000. ELL teachers and ed techs for each, about 180,000 for teachers, another 111 for ed techs, and then special ed instruction, again, to be able to meet the hybrid model, looking at this point at an additional 1.9 teacher FTEs at approximately 85,000 in continuation costs, and 6 ed techs, which takes us to get us another 167,000 or so in continuation costs. So all of these costs to maintain these staff FTEs would cost us $1.9 million after December 31st that we'd have to find from sources other than the CRF resources that we already have. Go ahead and move forward. And so this is the financial implications and potential continuation costs of non-position areas of investment, such as the building subs. So I'm not considering these positions because we would, at this point, we've posted these kind of as temp positions through December 31st with the option or the hope of being able to continue, but they were posted as positions through December 31st. Obviously, it's a need that very well may continue. We expect will continue after December 31st. That would cost another $600,000 or so to maintain. Additional temp coverage, we're calling building aids, another $140,000 or so to continue. And then, of course, the enormous cost of potentially continuing before and after care after December 31st is about $1.7 million at current estimates. So for these additional areas of investment, another $2.4 million, and the total on the prior slide of continuation costs and the total on this slide of continuation costs, all coming after December 31st, is about $4.4 million. So it's extremely significant. And you can go ahead and move on. So, what do we have in terms of funds identified to potentially meet some of these needs in the latter half of the year? So first, as I already said, coronavirus relief funds, we've got $6.2 million. We're feeling good about being able to fund what we need through December 30th. After that, I, at this point, have identified about 1.5 million in available budget. So I've identified approximately 800,000 in our operating budget that I believe we can reallocate to these efforts. And that's a combination of a few things. I don't want to go into too much detail on it right now. I'm happy to do that for the Finance Committee, but in summary, it's additional retirements that happened after the budget process, and it's some strategic use of our FY20 balances in a way that has enabled us to preserve some of our grant funding, and that then in turn enables us to preserve some of our general fund in FY21, and a couple other areas that we've identified as savings in our operating budget. And then, of course, as we've discussed in the past, we still have our CARES contingency of about $650,000 that we can use as a backstop to fund some of these efforts. Now, that's not a great option because if we use that, we don't have it available for our budget for next year, and we have to recall that we have 1.3 million in custodians budgeted right now on the CARES fund, and we're going to have to put that back on our general fund budget next year to the extent we don't have any CARES funds remaining. So that's not a great option. It's not what we want to do, but it is a bucket of funding that is available for critical needs. And then, of course, as we move into the year, we very well may find ourselves with some COVID-related savings. I'm assuming there'll be some savings in field trips and travel, potentially in transportation and metro with students attending remote, and potentially other areas. But before we really dive into the year, I can't really put a figure on that at this time, but I am optimistic there will be some savings as well. And then as a last resort, we have a capital reserve that would be used specifically for any additional facilities modifications we may need to make. We have fund balance as well. Utilizing these options would require, for the capital reserve, a council vote. And if we wanted to actually try, utilize our fund balance, and actually increase our budget for the year, we would be, required to go back out to voters. So we do have some reserve balances, but they are just that, they're reserves, they're not budgeted. So that would be, a last resort consideration. And that pretty much rounds out, I think, our options for funding. So happy to take any questions as well. That's it for me.
So I just want to point out that there are additional slides in the PowerPoint that are more detailed slides around some of the staffing for anybody who has additional questions. So I would like to recognize Barb and her team. They've done incredible work, as you heard just today, in terms of, being able to identify and begin the staffing process for large numbers of people. These are, fairly daunting. We spoke about this before, at the meeting on August 19th. I did say that this would be one of the things that we would be monitoring. So at this point, I thought it would be important for you to see what it is that we're actually dealing with. We're trying to get deep into those numbers to understand which schools are most seriously affected, because those are the places where, if push came to shove, we may need to start school in a different format, because we just would not have enough staff in place. So that's the next level of work for us. I think we talked about this at the last meeting, that one of the things that we're finding with this is every time that you clear a hurdle, there's another hurdle. There's another level of questions, there's another level of analysis that's required. And so, we are trying to understand at the school level, where is it that we are experiencing the most difficulty, and would be prepared to start school in remote format in those instances if we were not able to staff up for that. So again, thanks Barb and the team. Thank you, Miranda, I know that this was, sort of a tall order to get all of these numbers together and then be able to analyze for what our potential cost implications are. I think it goes without saying from Miranda's presentation that there are some significant questions for us looming ahead in terms of prioritizing what we are able to continue and what we will need to stop doing prior to the CRF funds running out. So unless there's a significant infusion of additional resources from the federal government or state government, that we are looking at a very significant hole that we will need to plug. And Miranda has done a tremendous job of identifying some potential sources, but those are not enough to cover the total expenses that we would expect to have in the second trimester and beyond. So with that, I'm going to let you ask any questions you might have, and then we will move on.
Before we start with the questions, so on the finances, Miranda, you mentioned we would have an opportunity to get a little bit more detail at the next finance meeting. So I just wanted to underline that, so that as we get our questions out there, that we kind of queue them up for a deeper discussion at the appropriate committee, and that we use our time today maybe for either a high level or get back to me later questions if that helps us get started.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, we put this in the superintendent's report. It's not a workshop, or it's clearly not an action item, because we don't have a full enough picture to actually do either of those. So that's why we put it into my superintendent's report. So please just keep your questions, at the high level around the data that was presented today, and then any additional questions that you have, please send them to me separately, and we will look to answer those.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent. I think that's a good way to frame it. Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much to Ms. Stoddard and to Miranda. That was really helpful information. I only have three points. The first question is to Barb, to Ms. Stoddard around, are we able or are you already making exceptions to qualifications for teachers or other positions you're hiring? And the reason I bring that up is I have a good friend in Wisconsin who just took a position as a Spanish teacher. She's on the way to completing her teaching certificate, but she hadn't completed it. So I'm just wondering, are we able to do that when we're hiring, or are you sticking to certain the qualifications needed to hire?
So we're following the DOE guidance, which has basically allowed for a waiver of certification this year, except for special ed positions. At this point, we have not hired anybody that is far outside the certification. But basically, anyone who has a bachelor's degree is technically eligible, and they have said that they will waive requirements if we need that.
Great, thank you. Around under specials, there were 11 FTEs necessary, and I'm just curious, is that because in those areas we're doing those in the remote academy, and that's where the 11 FTEs are needed?
Do you want me to take it, Erin? No, this is related to being able to create a schedule within our elementary schools where every teacher has their students go to a 45-minute block each day in order to make sure we have the appropriate planning and lunch and for our teachers. And that also enables students to have a full special schedule because our specials teachers this is somewhat related, but maybe worth saying because folks have had questions, they're not going to go around and visit every class so that there's a lot of exposure. So they're going to be working kind of in the block schedule. And so in order to enable all of that scheduling to happen, we had to make those ads.
Okay, thank you. And then my final is just to say welcome to Anne, your new executive assistant. You hadn't mentioned that earlier, and the new hires. And I just applaud Anne already because it's a large job you've taken. But welcome, and just wanted to say hi. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Ms. Bondo?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think my question goes to Superintendent. Do you have, you may not have that question, the answer straight right now. On the time frame, because we have to figure out right now if we may have enough teachers to be in person before September 14, before we got the school back. What do you think we may have the time frame to know if we're going to be able to have the student to have the in person, or we may switch to just to be on the one side remotely just because of the shortage of the staffing?
That's why I said, we need to understand at the school level where the pressure points are. There's no question that we will be able to open, many of our schools. So,
right.
We're not making, this is not a bifurcated yes or no decision. This is,
okay.
Potentially in some schools, we might have to postpone it until we could get the full staffing in place.
The full staffing, okay. Can I understand a little bit the consolidation of classroom? What we mean about it? Those going to be on the remote academy, or is going to be in person? Those consolidation, how is going to look?
Erin, do you want to?
Sure. So just briefly, I think the best way to understand it is, as Barb said, we had 71 positions go to remote academy. And we are only needing to backfill, 20 of those.
Okay.
So we were able to consolidate approximately 50 of them from existing because we had that many students moving. And so positions were able to kind of follow the kids into remote academy but that wasn't true in every instance because the impacts and registrations were not always consistent, or didn't afford us the flexibility because we still needed to maintain class size and space limitations in terms of our cohorts. But the majority of them we were able to consolidate from existing positions and move, have those positions follow the kids in the remote academy.
Okay, all right, thank you. So my last question is to Bob, and just want to make sure that all the FTs, then we try to have a backfill, or those are everything included, because I know previously we had some opening to try to fill up on some other language. I think the English teachers and some of those areas. So all those FTs, then we're looking now, is everything included?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Mr. Burke?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for working so incredibly hard. I'm admittedly having a rather large reaction to some of this news. So, Javier, you answered this in part, but to be pointed, when do you expect to make a decision on either a school-by-school basis or district-wide to pivot to remote based on staffing?
As soon as we have the data, Mr. Burke. That's the challenge for us is, we're working around the clock to sort of put all these pieces together. And so, I don't have a specific date. If I had one, I would have given it to you. I just, I don't. So, I'm very conscious of the fact that people are waiting for the decision, and that's why we wanted to make this visible, and we wanted to let you know that we are trying to dig deep and understand. So, for example, like we don't foresee any challenges at the high schools, largely because most students are already. The way that we've structured that programming, we don't envision a large number of positions that need to be filled. But some elementary schools have fairly significant losses of staff, and so those are the places that we are struggling the most, and we just need to get a real handle on that.
And then did I understand, in part because of these cost projections, that we're saying a real option is that we staff up for September through December and then we let folks go if we don't have any sources of funding?
So that's a good question. And I did mention that we would need to prioritize. So there are, a number of other things that we may not be able to continue. So, for example, the child care programming is one of those areas that we might not be able to continue come the second trimester if there's no additional money. We may reduce the number of in-person substitutes that we have in our schools. If we were to move to full on all students in school, we would not need some of the flexibility that we've built in around specials and things along those lines. So there's lots of decisions ahead of us, but clearly there's $4.5 million of potential expenses and not $4.5 million of additional resources available to us for the second semester. So that's a long way of saying yes.
Understood. Thank you. This is a question that backtracks a little bit, and understand if you need to get back to me off email, but in all the scenario planning that was done, was there any financial scenario ever run where instead of like the hotspots and things like that to patch up our remote learning capabilities, where we just pay for high-speed internet directly to families and provide childcare for families that need it?
We did not, no.
Okay, and then lastly, I'm just curious because it wasn't part of the update, particularly at the elementary. Has there been any consideration of continuing the AB pattern for longer than the projected 4 weeks to allow that pattern to stick for folks, for people to be settled in that pattern.
Staying hybrid, in other words?
Yeah, instead of going to the full 5 days on October 14th.
Sure. I mean, we talked about that at the time that we made the recommendation. That, our recommendation is to move to full 5 days a week, if everything goes well during this trial period. So that would be, the circumstances would be if we did not think that we could pull that off.
Okay, thank you.
Let's, Ms. Bondo, I don't know, is your hand back up? Or is this from before?
Yeah, I need to load my hand. I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem, Ms. Bondo. And Ms. Morioni, you?
I was just going to let you know, I got a text from Ms. Thompson. She's having trouble with her internet, so she's not going to join us until she can get back on.
Yeah, she texted me too. Thanks for letting the rest of us know. Ms. Pigdor?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the extraordinary work that is going into reopening schools. It's kind of mind-blowing just to get a sense at this high level of all that that you all are managing and working through, and I think doing so with certainly a huge amount of integrity and poise and creativity. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of this. As a board member, it's almost hard to keep track of what's happening because it's so big. I'll be sure to do my best to keep track of it all, but I just want to acknowledge all of the work and thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vigno. I don't see any other hands raised. I just had a couple of quick things to run through, and some of these are more to queue it up for our finance committee. So first of all, our next finance committee is scheduled for the 17th, which will be after the official start of in-person instruction. And the reason I mention that is just as a reminder that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, should the superintendent not have the staffing required to begin with a hybrid and force a remote in one individual school or a number of them, it does not require board action. So the superintendent, with the plan that we reapproved, this is part of the flexibility that's built in there. And like he mentioned at the beginning of his comments today, this was part of our discussion on the 19th. So we knew that this was one of the risks and one of the serious ones.
Chair,
I just wanted to
I believe the next finance committee meeting might be on the 10th.
That's
okay,
correct.
I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah.
But let me just comment on that if I can. I don't think that there's anything that's going to happen at the finance committee that is going to influence the decision to move forward or not. And I will say that there would need to be board action if we decided that we were going to do anything other than postpone for a period of time until we were able to get up to staffing. So, if we arrived at a point where we said that, we were going to be moving to full online, then that would be that. I would come back to the board for that. But if we needed to delay the start of in-person instruction at one or two or even three schools, then it's something that we would just do until we are able to get ourselves staffed up.
Okay, that's helpful. And I guess the reason I brought it up just to see if the timing of our meetings would play a role in that, our need to make a decision. And I guess the only other thing that I wanted to queue up as information, ahead of the meeting on the 19th, you had shared with the board last year's enrollment numbers. And so compared to the number of students that opted for the remote option, I think you shared those numbers with us as well. So if we can just compare that, so we see from building to building what percentage of students opted for remote, see if there's any discrepancies there geographically. And then I'm guessing the next logical way to look at this is what you were commenting. What buildings do we have that the greater need of staffing to compensate for then the number of students that are there? And so, which is just kind of exactly what you just described, but putting the total numbers together. Yeah, I mean,
partial look at that in one of the slides.
One of the slides, I know. Yeah, and that's all really helpful. And again, for me, I'm looking at this as really informational pieces, understanding that we want to try to stay on top of it, and that you will let us know should any changes occur, and of course, should the board need to take action on anything. So that's all I have. I mean, I once again, acknowledge all the hard work that the staff is doing. We knew going into this that staffing was going to be one of the greatest challenges. We touched on the executive order from Governor Mills that allows for some flexibility for the state certifications, where that's immensely helpful. I hope that we can leverage that in ways that facilitate our hiring. And my immediate thought after I heard that news was that I'm sure that we have a pool of candidates that could benefit from that, or at least we have some connections within our school that could benefit from that opportunity. So I'm thankful for that from the governor and from the Department of Education. That's all I have. Javier, do you have anything else that's left of your report?
That's my report.
Great. So if we don't have any other questions or comments from the board, again, I'll double down saying thank you for everything, and we'll look forward to getting more updates as things progress. Moving on our agenda, we are up to report of the secretary. Just to note that the minutes from the August 19th meeting are not on board docs yet, so we're going to wait until our next meeting on the 15th to approve those. And so then we're on to consent items. Will the superintendent please read the list of donations made to the district?
Yes, we do not have any donations to report on the agenda tonight. However, we are scheduled for a quarterly update from the foundation for Portland Public Schools. You may recall that we promised last year to have a quarterly report from the foundation, and this is the first such report since about a year ago when we made that promise. Since that time, a lot has happened. Then Executive Director Kate Snyder became our mayor, and we had a period where the foundation conducted a search for our new executive director, Andy Weissman-Summers, who I know you've met before. And Andy was selected just either days before or the day of going into school closure. So it's been a steep learning curve in a scenario that was unanticipated, but she absolutely hit her stride, and alongside the foundation really hit its stride as it's worked to make the needs of the school district visible to the community, with what I think is great success. So I'm happy to invite Executive Director Andy Weissman-Summers to share an update on the foundation's work over the past 6 months. Andy.
Thank you so much, Javier. Aaron, are you able to play the slides, or do you have those? I have a few.
I don't, but I could enable you to be able to do that.
That sounds good.
Okay, and you should be good.
All right. And sorry, now of course I have my new computer from the district today, and it's giving me an error message. Because let me see if I can get the settings updated.
If you can make me the co-host, then I can share my screen.
Sorry about that. I wouldn't have anticipated that getting a new computer today would make this impossible, and yet it's saying I would have to quit out to be able to share it. I'm sorry.
Did you make me co-host? Yep, okay. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Superintendent.
Can you guys see that?
Perfect. All right. Thanks. As Superintendent Botana shared, there hasn't been one of these updates for over a year. We do plan to start them quarterly. And so what I decided to do is to give an update from April 1st until today, which is basically when I started. You can go to the next slide.
Oops. This is where it always gets funky for me because I have two different screens. Here we go.
Wonderful. So I wanted to just very quickly talk about the priorities that the Foundation's been working on throughout the spring and summer. When I started on April 4th or something along those lines, we were fully focusing on COVID-19 emergency response. So the two funds that we worked on then were the Portland Public Schools Food Fund, which had existed for a couple of years and was a small fund that is a partnership with the Food Fuels Learning Network that grew into quite a significant fund with incredible support from the district social workers and some of the parent community specialists. Similarly, the Families in Crisis Fund, which works on non-food related crisis needs like rent, utilities assistance, medical costs, grew from being a small, occasionally used fund to a substantial support for Portland students and families. Those two funds, we raised something around $73,000 between March 15th and the end of the school year that was distributed to families. With the basic premise that students can't focus on learning if they are hungry or have insecure housing or, lack of basic utilities. We also supported a books to home fund that sent books to be sent to homes to individually identified elementary school students who were struggling to connect to remote learning. Another focus of the spring was that our annual fundraiser, Spring for Teachers, that largely funds the Equity and Innovation Teacher Grants, was canceled due to the pandemic. We moved that event to being an online Thank a Teacher fundraiser. And we also launched a new campaign, the Addressing the Opportunity Gap campaign, that was designed to deepen and accelerate racial equity work across the district. That campaign started in July. We have raised close to $60,000 so far as well, and we have several other pledges and potential other grant applications pending. So I believe we're on track to meeting our $100,000 goal this year for equity work in the district that's above and beyond what was already planned and happening. We're currently fundraising for some of the costs that Miranda and Barb referenced, which is trying to get additional funding for community partnerships for childcare starting in January, if possible. And then in addition to kind of all of these major priorities, we're continuing to manage the school-based funds that are part of the foundation, such as the Annetta Weatherhead Fund for Reiki, the Step Up Awards, Rising Tide, and so on. And we write grants for district needs as they come up. Next. So the bulk of this quarterly report was meant to be thanking of major donors. So these are the donors who have given over $1,000 between April 1st and today. I'm not going to read them all, but I do want to draw attention to some of the most prominent gifts. We received a $26,000 grant from the Lennox Foundation for teacher grants, as well as general operating and professional development costs for the foundation. The United Way has funded us through their COVID rapid response grants twice, $20,000 for the food fund and $12,000 for the Families in Crisis Fund. Then as we move down that list, a thank you to the Francis Hollis Brain Foundation via Maine Community Foundation, who donated, who responded to a grant for $5,000 for families in crisis. Spectrum Charter Communications has given $14,534 worth of brand new laptops for Portland adult education students. And Unum has given a tremendous gift of $20,000 for summer school or extended learning. And very recently, Martins Point Health donated $10,000 to the Addressing the Opportunity Gap campaign. Not on here is the John T. Gorman Foundation, which has pledged $25,000 for Addressing the Opportunity Gap, although it hasn't been received yet, it will be received shortly. Next. And then briefly, these are the major individual donors who have given $1,000 or more since April 1st. I did not have a chance to update these slides since Friday, but we have received 2 additional $1,000 donations just this week. So I just wanted to give a shout out. One was an anonymous donation to the Child Care Community Partnerships work, and then one was a $1,000 donation that went to outdoor teaching and learning, which is something we're collecting funds for from William Mill. Next. And I'm sorry, we're happy to be on this slide, but what I didn't say is just that those are the major donors, but the vast majority of donors to the foundation, and thus to the Portland schools, are donors who give $20, $50, $100, and that makes up the bulk of what we do. We have hundreds of donors who are parents and community members, owners of businesses, who donate on that small level, some of whom are recurring donors, donate $10 a week, and really I want to give a tremendous thank you to those folks. Our annual report is going to be published next week and mailed out, and all of those donors will be individually thanked, other than those who asked to be kept anonymous. In that form, it will be mailed out to donors, and it will be available on our website within 2 weeks. So this just brings us to kind of next steps. Our Equity and Innovation Teacher Grants applications are now open. They'll be available to apply until October 2nd. We've raised or set aside $50,000 to grant to teachers to meet for innovation or to meet their students' needs. We imagine that teachers are seeing needs they never would have anticipated, and so we're hoping that we can play a small role in empowering and supporting teachers to do the work they need to do. And then a couple of other changes. We're launching an advisory board in addition to our board of directors that should be launching in October, and we anticipate changing our bylaws to try to add 2 or 3 students to our board at our September board meeting, such that we can bring students on by November. And then finally, for the first time, there will be an opt-in on the first day of school packet for all families to join our email list and get information about the foundation, because we're aware that a lot of the families in the district don't know we exist, and we're hoping that we can get them kind of in the fold to hear about the work we do, to support it in any ways that they can. And that is the quick report. The next one should be scheduled in December. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. All right, so board members, if we can use the raise your hand feature, I'll call you up. Ms. Figdor?
Thanks so much, Andy, for this update and for all your work. I wanted to say just how pleased I am to see that you're considering adding students to your board. I really think that that would be a great step forward in terms of our commitment to student voice, and that it would, I feel confident that it would strengthen the work of the foundation. And so I'm really enthusiastic to see that, and thank you for considering it.
Super, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor. Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'm just absolutely blown away. Thank you, Andy. This is, in a matter of a short amount of time, I have seen such growth that I just want to say thank you to you and the board. And to get this, also the foundation information out to all families, absolutely critical, and I'm so happy that you're working towards that as well. I think so often it's missed, and it's hard for you to get out into the community otherwise. So I appreciate all your hard effort, and I think it's going to all the right places, and just staying totally on track with what Portland Public Schools needs are. So I think it's a great partnership. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes. Thank you, Andy. I just want to acknowledge, because this is amazing about what the foundation is supposed to know. So it's something that I want to see. Maybe then we can improve on the mission of the foundation. How we can communicate down to the community and parents and families. And I think if we can go with different communication pieces, like having some translation on some of those missions of the foundation, so we can increase the pool of our donors. because we need to understand, and we have a great pool of donors, but they just need to know that the foundation really exists and what the mission that the foundation does for the district. So I think that's something that we can take in consideration. So I'm so proud, and because I've been in the district for years, but I even didn't know about the role of the foundation until you just start bringing to the board right now, and then we can see how we can support and spread to the large community the value or what we're standing for the mission. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Mickey. I do want to say that when we have a list of people who sign up by the end of September from the first day packet, we will send out an email to all of the new folks who have joined us, kind of introducing us and our work and our impact. And we're trying to have an increased communications plan of email updates to everyone on our list at least once or twice a month, as well as multiple weekly social media posts. Right. And I would be remiss if I took the credit for this. We have I have an advancement associate who works with me, Janine Bischoff, and I just need to give her a public shout out as well, because this wouldn't be possible without her.
Yeah, because the number we increasing the small donors, $10, $20, that's why they make a big difference. And I think we have a lot of parents who can donate that one easily to improve the mission of the foundation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bondo. I don't see any other hands raised. Andy, I'll say thank you so much for the presentation. I have one quick question around the use of unrestricted funds, or can you just share with the board what I understand? I think when you explained to me, out of every donation, there's a small percentage of it that is automatically put as unrestricted in the general fund. Can you just talk a little bit about your thoughts around that and how you want to expand the use of the general fund?
Yeah, so we take a 6% fee for operating cost and administrative cost out of most of our donations. We've waived that for the coronavirus response and crisis funds for this whole spring. Our board will vote at some point this fall whether we'll reinstate it or not for some of those funds, but at this point we are not taking it. We are, so for the crisis funds. So those funds go toward our administrative costs, our postage and supplies, which average about $25,000 or $30,000 a year. They also supplement the teacher grants. We haven't historically raised a full $50,000 through donations or grants, so we typically transfer some of the unrestricted funds for that. And then beyond that, they're, for a combination of having some kind of reserve for us as an organization and meeting needs. So if we have a request from the district, I believe last year there was a request for trauma-informed practice training for social workers, and we decided to grant that using unrestricted funds because it seemed like such a pressing need. So there's kind of some flexibility for that. And I'm ideally, Janine, who I mentioned, her salary for 2 years was funded by a capital or capacity campaign, so entirely funded by fundraising from the district. After that 2 years, potentially, if we grow enough that we'll find that her salary is worthwhile, we would hope that the board might consider adding that to the budget, but we certainly understand the budget is always tremendously tight. And I would hope that if we increase our fundraising enough and we can use those administrative fees, they may be enough to eventually cover a second person's salary as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that.
Can I comment on that real quick? Because I did want to just, and I appreciate Andy raising that, Janine Bischoff is amazing and has done a tremendous job. And I just wanted to make sure that, both the board and people who are following the meeting understand that that is money that was raised by the foundation to support that. The only salary that is currently in the school district's budget is the executive director's salary, and that's been since the inception. And the foundation, as you can see, is doing tremendous work, really incredibly valuable for the district. And, Janine is a big part of that, and that was fundraising by the foundation, understanding that we needed to be able to do that, to be able to grow the programming in the way that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Javier. That's important to remind folks of that. Andy, I guess the last thing that I wanted to say was, the two things, I guess, real quick. First of all, I love the alignment of what we've seen recently with the Families in Crisis Fund, the Food Fund, the Opportunity Gap Fund, the alignment of those initiatives with the Portland Promise, right? And what we are trying to advance through our budget, but clearly are not able to cover all the needs. So I love the alignment there, and this is, in my view, the strongest way that we can work together, foundation and certainly the board. And so I'm ecstatic to hear that. And then last thing, I just want to echo what Ms. Victor said. I absolutely love that you're trying to bring students onto your board. I'm a strong advocate for student voice and everything that has to do with our decision making. I hope that I probably shouldn't say this. I hope that the students that you end up getting onto your board are full members of your board with full voting abilities, and not just a token position. And you and I have talked about this, so you and I understand how much I value the opportunities that we give the youth to be in these positions. So I thank you for bringing that up and to be a strong advocate for that. Any way that we can support you with that, you know that you can count on it.
Thank you. That is the proposal that our board will vote on in September, is to bring students on as full voting members.
Excellent. Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Andy. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Board members, if we don't have any other questions or comments, we'll give a collective thank you and just kicking butt, Andy. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Javier, are you done then with your report?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because that was
It was not my report, but
that's right. That was part of the.
That's a thing
separate. Cool. All right. So moving on our agenda, we are in new business. Consideration and action to ratify a one-year contract with the Benefit Association of School Employees. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second by Mr. Atkinson. We do not, or do we take questions and discussion on this? Okay, so do we have any board questions?
Do you mind if I ask Barb to speak to it just briefly, just to fill in the blanks for everyone? And I know we discussed it in executive session, but I do think that for the public, it would be helpful to have that overview.
Definitely. Yeah, Barb, please.
Thank you. So during our executive session, board member Morioni commented that our base employees are the backbone of our district, and I just want to say that I couldn't agree more. These folks are here, day in and day out, making the district run. With regard to negotiating the base contract, we tried to get negotiations started earlier this year, and given all the distractions associated with the pandemic, we weren't able to get meetings scheduled. So in early August, we went to the base union leadership and asked them to consider a one-year extension of their existing contract. So we're here tonight to ask the board to vote to ratify a one-year extension to the base collective bargaining agreement. Due to the pandemic and the resulting challenges associated with planning for the reopening of school, the board and district administrative team and the base leadership are hoping to agree to this one-year extension together of the existing contract. There are no changes except for the agreed upon salary adjustments of a 1.5% cost of living adjustment and step increases that would be effective retroactively to July 1st. The base leadership voted unanimously in support of this extension on Sunday, August 23rd. The increase that's part of this was approved in our fiscal 21 budget that was approved in June by the voters. The total dollar value is $230,000. $140,000 of that is associated with the COLA. $90,000 is part of the steps. I just want to close by thanking Liz Bryant. She's not here tonight, but I want to thank her and her leadership team for their work with us on this request. Additionally, Liz is always available to problem solve with me, and I want to thank her and her team for their support of the district and their work to keep things running smoothly every day.
Thank you, Barb. So, board, do we have any questions? Okay. I see no hands raised, no questions. Do we have any public comment on the motion? Or we don't take public comment on this, do we?
You can take public comment on it.
Yeah. So if we have any public comment on the motion, I'll ask any attendees to use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. And if we do have any hands raised, I'll go over the public comment rules. Okay. And seeing none, we'll move back to board discussion. Do we have any comments from the board before we vote? Yeah, I don't see any hands raised. So I'll bring us to the vote just by saying that, you know, as Barb mentioned, Ms. Morioni commented, the base unit represents the backbone of our district. These are folks that we seldomly probably recognize, certainly at this level, but they clearly are, you know, in many cases, the first point of connection to many of our students and families to the district. When we talk about, you know, our crossing guards and our bus drivers, these are the folks that interact with our children outside of the classroom that most of us don't immediately think about when we think about education. But clearly, these folks and our secretaries, and I mean, these are folks that are often unspoken heroes. So I'm happy that we were able to achieve an understanding that they can unanimously agree on, and that the board can then support. I'm going to ask the superintendent to call a roll call for a vote. So all those in favor of approving all those in favor of ratifying a 1-year contract with the Base Association of School Employees, please indicate when your name is called.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson? Ms. Trevorrow? And Chair Rodriguez.
Yes. And so the motion passes unanimously with 7 votes. And we know Ms. Thompson she's having some connection issues, so she's not able to get back on, and Ms. Trevorrow was not here. Great, thank you all. Next, consideration and action to direct the chair to provide the board's decision to deny the grievance discussed in executive session to the grievant and the PEA within 10 days. Do we have a motion? Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Morioni. We will not take questions or comments on the grievance, so we'll move directly into a roll call vote.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez.
Yes. And so that motion passes as well with a unanimous vote, 7 votes in favor. All right, next. All right, consideration and action to approve submission of a co-op swimming application for Deering and Portland High Schools. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, second by Ms. Figdor. Would the superintendent please speak to the motion?
I'm going to ask Mr. Townsend to please speak to the motion.
Great. Thank you and good evening, board. Excited to bring this item forward. I know, we had a number of opportunities in the winter and spring of last year to address the topic of potential co-ops. So as we had kind of committed to last spring, we would bring them forward for your consideration kind of on a sport by sport basis. in a kind of timely fashion ahead of the deadline for submission to MPA for approval. So, one, want to acknowledge that there are a lot of questions out there about what athletics and specifically athletics are going to look like over the course of the year. So we recognize that there's still a lot of decision making in play around that. That being said, we felt it was prudent and in the best interests of our current high school student athletes to bring this motion forward for your consideration tonight. So what you have in front of you is an action to approve, to provide board approval of the, a proposal to form a cooperative boys and girls swim team between Portland High and Deering, and so that we can then, submit the formal application through MPA. If you'll remember in our discussions last spring, the process, ultimately MPA is the ultimate decision maker on approval of the co-ops, but it requires board authorization prior to going there. So that's what we're seeking this evening. And I have here tonight the co-curricular directors from Portland High and Deering High, Lance Johnson and Michael Daly, to help present the details of this motion for your consideration this evening. So I will turn it over to Lance and Mike to speak to the details of this and the rationale and the engagement we've done around supporting this motion.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron, and thank you, board. I'll lead off and then hand it over to Lance and maybe wrap it up. And Aaron, if you could share those slides, could you do that?
Okay. Apologies.
Read that previous one before the.
Are you seeing this? Are you seeing the charts or no?
Yeah, I'm seeing the charts. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. So just a little background before we get into this chart. The MPA, we had discussions with back in June and then in July again, and asked them. And this is a little bit of the process unofficially, is to kind of have a dialogue with them before submitting the application to have a conversation about what we were thinking. So I reached out to Mike Burnham and Mike Bisson at the MPA and had those conversations in June, again in July, and followed up. And their main concerns were, does it present a competitive disadvantage for a co-op team? In addition, would it displace student athletes and reduce opportunities? And really the third parameter they asked too is that it cannot be something that's done just for a cost savings impetus. So those three things were what they brought up. Those are the things we brought to our swim coaches. And again, I'd like to, if I forget to, I want to make sure I thank our two swim coaches, Sarah Rasmussen and Kyle Rasmussen. Sarah's at Deering, Kyle's at Portland. They did incredible work in getting us those answers to those questions and also helping with the survey data we'll talk about as well. They've been fantastic helping us lead these discussions, really starting all the way back in January and February. So thank you to them, and they might have a chance to join us tonight too to speak. So we got the answers to those questions, not showing here on the slide, but just in general, what the answer was from the from our coaches, and what we presented to the MPA is on this slide right here. And it was really that it came down to really wouldn't present a competitive advantage, as our teams finished in the boys this year, 18 out of 25 teams, and the girls were, and for Deering, 18 out of 25, and for Portland, 15 out of 25 in the SMA, in the state championship, excuse me. And for the girls, it was 20 out of 22 teams for Deering, 22 out of 22 for Portland. So clearly not necessarily a competitive advantage if we combined. In terms of displacing swimmers, and we'll get into rosters in a second, but just generally, 3 boys returning. Again, this does not include freshmen, but 3 swimmers for Deering and 7 for Portland. And then for the girls, 9 for Deering and 4 for Portland. So there's plenty of opportunities, especially considering that rosters could be upwards of 50 on swim teams. So I think we answered that question, and we didn't really get into too much of it being a cost impetus for us to make this decision and try to put this forward as a co-op, but we've talked about that before. I think the estimate was about a $20,000 savings for the co-op. So we can talk about that at the end as well. So we'll get into the survey. So next steps, we asked the coaches to help us with a survey. I know the board had asked us back in February to survey the student athletes and parents, and we did that. And Aaron, if we can go to those 2 slides. Yep. So the survey included 32 responses, and that just happened at the end of July, August. And that represented both Portland and Deering. I believe there were 17 responses from Portland, 15 from Deering, both parents and swimmers. And for a total, we had an 88% support of the co-op, so 28 out of 32, and 12% against. And those are very basic numbers on the response. There were comments that were included as well, and we can answer and speak to those, and maybe our coaches can as well, because there were specific concerns, but then a lot of support, as you can tell. And I'll hand it over to Lance so he can join us, and you can hear from him as well as we talk about the co-op.
So as Michael said, there was a lot of support for this. 28 out of the 32, so almost 90% of the comments were positive in support of the co-op. The 4 that were negative, 3 of them were vague in their response. They just said, we're not for it, but we realize it might happen. And only 1 negative response was in detail, and they were concerned about a crowded practice. But with our numbers, there's 10 returning swimmers from in the boys and 13 in the girls. So an average team is 20 to 25. 20 to 50. So we're still only have. And also with the situation we're in with COVID, the practices may have to be separated this winter anyway. So there'll be plenty of time for the student athletes to get sufficient coaching. So again, those comments weren't, the other comments were very vague, but it looks like majority of the people are in support of this. The booster president at Portland High School is a swim parent. I had a conversation with him, and he said that most of the people are in support of this. He had a daughter that graduated last year, and he has a son that's coming as a freshman, so he's going to stay on that booster board. And he thought the people that he talked to, everyone was pretty positive about this going forward. A lot of the student athletes have grown up swimming together, so they know each other. And a lot of the athletes, the positive comments, they were very excited about being able to practice and work with swimmers that are at the other school that they grew up swimming with, and they thought it would be a fun thing to do for everybody.
Thanks, Lance. And yeah, the only thing I'll say to just conclude and wrap it up, we'll keep it succinct since I know you've had some long meetings recently. From a consideration of cost savings for this year, it would be unique, as Lance had mentioned, because we possibly could have practices that are smaller because of the requirements indoors. So these are all things we don't know yet. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about winter sports, and we'll find those out when we find those out. But we do expect maybe an initial cost savings for practice time at a pool might not be realized right away this year, but that might be offset if we're going to travel less due to any COVID restrictions or MPA guidelines that really require regional travel. So I think those would be offset. Long term, we should have more savings when it comes to the pool time for practices, since we'll have the same practice time at the pool. And hopefully we don't have to live through these guidelines forever. But we'll see. We'll adapt and adjust. I think travel certainly is a savings area. And we've already dealt with some savings from a coaching stipend standpoint, which are in this year's budget. So it does make sense to try to make sure that we move this forward this year. Thank you very much for your time. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Michael and Lance, for that. And Lance, thank you. This is your first time bringing something up to the board, so it's really good to have you on board. The board, do we have any questions on the motion, Ms. Marioni?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, it probably was in the document you provided, but where will the practices take place? The Riverton pool?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for all of the hard work on this.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands right now. So I guess I wanted to ask, just overall the process, particularly the surveying, and bringing this up. This is the new process that we've asked, so that the board can chime in. Just how you felt about it. I think the survey, it seemed to have been really helpful because it was heavily leaning in one direction. So I guess just your feedback on it, and did you find that this was a good way to go about it, and should we consider anything different the next one?
Sure. Yeah, I think it was really good to kind of look at it from the MPA's perspective. I thought that was very helpful to understand their process ahead of time and really address those even before we formally submit an application. So I thought that was educational and helpful for us and also our coaches to think about. And so that was a really good process. What I would maybe change is, I guess we didn't have time to really formalize a really great survey. I think it was a little bit rudimentary, but straightforward. I think we could do a little bit more in depth in the survey and maybe standardize that going forward. And I would we're hoping to maybe share some of the comments with the board a little bit better and compile that. So I think if we do that in the future, that'll make the understanding of the information from the students and the parents a little easier to digest for the board.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's again, this being a new process, I think it's helpful for us to know whether we hit it right or we just created a barrier to you to do something effectively. So I think I appreciate the feedback there. So board, if we don't have any other questions, I'll move us then to public comment on the motion. And just a reminder to the attendees that we're taking public comment on the motion to approve a submission for a co-op of swimming applications for Deering and Portland High School. I see one hand raised on the attendees, so I'll quickly go over the public comment rules. I will, excuse me. Oh, wow, I don't have, I'm going to have to do it from the top of my head. All right, so when I call your name from the list of attendees, I'll acknowledge you, and then you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please start with your name and address. Right towards the end of the 3-minute mark, I will probably interrupt you and to ask you to wrap it up, or if you need additional time, we can grant 1 minute, and then at the end of that minute, I will mute your microphone. I think that's it, right?
Do you need me to drop that in the chat? I mean, you got all the key points. It's
we've done this before.
Yeah, we've done this before.
All right, so I'll go to Sarah Rasmussen, and Javier. I'm not a host, so I cannot give them the ability to talk.
Aaron, can you make share? Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear us?
We sure can. Sarah, give me just a second so I can start up my timer. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready.
Oh, you're fine.
Great. All right, Sarah, go for it. And like I said, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Perfect. So I'm Sarah Rasmussen. I've been a coach at Deering for 4 years, and I've been head coach for 3 years.
And I'm Kyle Rasmussen, and I've been head coach at Portland for the last 2 years. I just really want to make an emphasis to the point that looking at our situation with our numbers this coming year, that with the combined teams, it would allow for the competitors to have more opportunities to compete as opposed to less opportunities with being able to fulfill lineups and fulfill relays. I think that's one thing that people are concerned about when creating a co-op team.
Yeah, and I think with that, the thing that we look at with this, and we've looked at with this, is this is something that's really desired by our swimmers and by our parents. It's something that's asked for, and we truly believe that the student-athlete experience as part of the team is going to be improved by being a co-op. We think that there are incredible benefits to team atmosphere and the overall athletic experience for the kids. We also believe this will be a really easy transition. Out of necessity due to pool space and practice times, these teams have already spent a lot of time together. We already have a lot of shared practices, a lot of shared coaching, and a really a shared team culture. So we really believe this will be a smooth transition moving forward.
Yeah, and we have one of our student athletes is on tonight, Kieran Das. Hopefully he can have a chance to say a few words as well.
Roberta, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, I haven't done that in a while. All right, thank you both for that. I'm still not a host, so I can't bring him back. But next, we'll go to Sarah Rubin.
Hi, my name is Sarah Rubin, and I live at 28 Harvey Street here in Portland. And I was the head coach of the Deering High School swim team from 2012 until the 2018-2019 season. And I volunteered since then. And I just wanted to voice my support for combining the Portland and Deering High swim teams. As an educator and an advocate for equity, I've always had a lot of concerns around combining co-curricular teams. Generally, when you combine teams or clubs, you can end up limiting opportunities for kids. But, you know, and I always think that our goal should be to expand chances for kids to participate in these activities, not shrink them. But Portland High School swimming programs are not typical athletic programs. Both have long and incredible histories with thousands of alumni who've contributed so much to Maine swimming. But at least since I started coaching, the two programs have really been combined anyway in a lot of ways. In order to make practice opportunities equitable, we've had to split pool time for at least the last 5 years, not only swimming in the same pool at the same time, but sometimes actually swimming together to be able to give all of our athletes the best practice possible. We share equipment for practice and to be able to run meets, and we both have swimmers from Casco Bay and Baxter Academy, so neither team is solely made up of PHS or DHS students anyway. And our student athletes really act like one team anyhow. They sit next to each other and cheer for each other at all of our district and our state competitions. At the end of the day, I think that combining our teams will actually give our swimmers more opportunities, not fewer. A larger team would allow our swimmers these opportunities as they would be able to participate in relays that they don't currently have enough athletes to fill. And it will give all of our athletes a chance to swim with other kiddos who match their ability level. So again, at the end of the day, I think that, you know, these teams have really been a de facto combined team for the last several years because of facility availability and all of the other things that I mentioned. And I'm really excited to offer this incredible opportunity for our Portland swimmers. And I know from talking to so many of our parents and our swimmers and our alumni that the Portland swimming community is equally excited to see this new team start out and see what they can do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And next, we'll go to Kiran Das.
My name is Kiran Das. I live at 68 Shepherd Lane, and I am a student at Baxter Academy that swims for the Portland High School swim team. And pretty much what I was thinking of saying, most of it has already been said, but I do want to share my support for combining both the teams, since we do practice a lot together, and I find it I have a lot more fun when we do practice with them, because there's like more people around and more people to like have fun with and do the practice with. And I also love the Portland versus Deering meets that have happened. They're really fun when we try to compete against each other and cheer for each other. And I also am in support of it because of, yet again, the relays, where we have more people to be able to make more full relay teams so we can swim together at a meet. And yeah, I think it just opens more opportunities for competition.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kiran. Right. I don't see any other hands raised in from the public, so we'll close the public comment, bring it back for board discussion. So board, do we have any other comments before we vote? I don't see any hands raised. So I'll just really briefly say I feel like the MPA's guidance here is aligned with the things that I would care about. I agree with, you know, the not getting a competitive advantage, because then that helps us reinforce the value of co-curriculars, right? There's a reason we call them co-curriculars and not extracurriculars, because they complement the entire vision for how we want to support our students. I love that we're not taking opportunities away to participate from all the students, because clearly that's the opposite of the intent that the board wanted to have by having this process for co-ops. So again, following that guidelines meets the concerns that I would have with doing something like this. Can I just say before we vote that just now, and I'm so happy that Kieran was here to speak, for just like a few minutes there, it felt so normal, right? Like we had a student tell us about something that they enjoy so much about school, and the excitement was there, and and we weren't, it felt normal, so just so happy that we have this moment right now. So having said that, Superintendent, let's put it to a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. And that passes unanimously with a 7-0 vote. Thank you, board member. Thank you again, Michael and Lance, for bringing this up and for the process to get us here.
Can I just also thank Mike and Lance, obviously, for their hard work on this. I know that this was the first time that we were trying out this new process, and I think it worked out really, really well. And I appreciate seeing the two of you working side by side doing this. I also want to recognize our principals who we said they didn't need to be here because they've got a lot of other things going on, and they were aptly represented by these two gentlemen, but they've also worked really hard to make sure that we brought you something that was well thought out and understood. And obviously, thank you to Assistant Superintendent Townsend for his leadership with all of our co-curricular work. So this was something that he started back in the spring when we were looking at the whole co-oping process, and he's brought it all the way to where we are today. So thank you, Aaron, as well.
Thank you, Superintendent, for pointing those out. All right, moving on the agenda, we're in personnel items. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, election of teacher candidates. We have a motion.
You had a first read too that you.
Oh, I didn't read it. I'm so sorry. Yes, let me read the first read on the policy. I'm sorry, guys. Let's hold on the motion for that one. So we have a first read of policy IJNDB. That's the student use of school issued computers, devices, and the internet. And that'll come up for a vote next meeting on the 15th. I'm sorry. So now we're back to the personnel items. Well, now we're actually at the personnel items. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Election of teacher candidates. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, second by Ms. Bondo. Barb, do you want to speak to the motion for us?
Sure. I'm not sure. I think these might be two separate ones. I think the first one you will be considering 6 one-year-only probationary teachers for your approval. That's what we're bringing forward.
Do we have any board questions? Okay, seeing none, we don't have public comment for personnel items. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, so we'll take a roll call vote. Superintendent, please.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. Excuse me. And so that motion passes unanimously with a 7-0 vote as well. Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, election of teacher candidates. Anything to add to this one, Barb?
Just that there are 7 probationary teachers on this list for your approval.
Thank you. Any board questions? Seeing none, and there's no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? None here as well. Superintendent, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Mr. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Figdor,
Yes.
Morioni,
Yes.
and Chair Rodriguez.
Yes, and so that motion passes also unanimously with a 7-0 vote. All right, and given that it's well before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? And I'll wait to see if any member of the public raises their hand, and if so, I actually found the public comment rules, so I might read them if I have to. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so I always feel awkward, like not giving people enough time because like technology, like sometimes we scramble to find the buttons. But I don't see any hands raised, so we can close the public comment. It's been a while since we can do that without like a 2-hour process. So next, can't believe I'm going to say this. We need a motion to adjourn. I can't believe I'm going to say this before 9 p.m. We need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Atkinson, and very enthusiastically, Ms. Figdor seconds it. We don't have to do a roll call. We can do a raise your hand vote. On the screen, all those in favor of adjourning the business meeting, please indicate. And that's unanimous. We've adjourned at 8:50, at the very respectable time of 8:50 p.m. Thank you all. Finally get to go home, or rather, we are home. Finally get to bed at a respectable time. Thank you all for your work tonight.
Take care. Bye-bye.